again had some changes in his coaching setup. I think he trains with Cole Hocker these days.
Yeah, he does.
Is that
with
correct?
Ben Thomas, their coach, out on the East Coast now.
Dylan Jacobs went to the World Indoors in China. I was mentioning this guy. He ran an incredible 10,000 meters last week, but he missed the start.
Yep.
And he essentially ran 10,080 meters and still ran an incredibly fast time. More of that as we go through this. Gebriwet, former world champion. He only missed the whole of the 2022 season 3 years ago, and some people thought he might never get back to the sort of form he had as a youngster, but he's done it brilliantly. Ronald Quemoy, as I mentioned, great range, silver medal at the Olympic Games in this event, the 5,000 meters. Ndika Wenayo moved to Spain. I think he got clearance a couple of years ago, and the former Burundi man, proud to wear the vest of Spain these days. Grant Fisher in such great form last year, but goodness me, has he carried that on into 2025. World records indoors, and we'll line all that up for you as they get going. And Philippe Thiboutot. So 12.5 laps of the track. I mentioned earlier it's got a fair bit cooler than it was earlier in the evening, so pretty good conditions for these guys. And if anything, the breeze has just about disappeared as well, because that's all it was, a breeze, he says. So no pacemakers again, Carrie. These guys are normally used to it. In the 3,000 we saw Gatage go for it, you know, 7.5 laps. 5,000, it's a brave man who takes it on from the start.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know who can wind it up, and we have a lot of guys that can wind it up in this race, but I do think that the one that we were talking about, Grant Fisher, the guy that's just been so sharp this indoor season, I think he can run either way, and that's what's going to be interesting tonight. I don't know which way he'll run. He probably will sit in this position and just dictate what's going on around him, because everyone's thinking about Grant Fisher right now.
But he's quick as well, you know. But if you kind of looked at some of the great 5,000, 10,000 meter runners in recent times, you know, Gebriwet's right in there.
Yep.
Makes the Ethiopian team. That's number one. That's a hard thing. And then he's got pace as well. Doesn't always outkick, you know, who's going to outkick Ingebrigtsen in the 5,000 meters, for instance. But you know, Fisher's kind of the same. I think they're really well matched, these two guys, in terms of their ability. Fisher's probably in the best shape right now. But if they were in a flat-out race, and I saw them at the end of a race, I sort of get the feeling that it would be a good match.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very strong, but also speedy. The thing that Grant Fisher has said is that he's really tried to work on that finishing kick. And we saw that indoors. I mean, he raced Cole Hocker, who's been running so well and really put a lot into the indoor season. And Grant Fisher took it to him the last 200 meters indoors in Boston, where he ran that world record in the 3,000. So he's got the leg turnover. They are walking right now.
Let's just talk about what happened to Bekele last week. So you look at the result and it says 26:52, which is a world-class 10,000
anytime under 27, right?
100%. They were lined up on the start line, and then one of the athletes had realized he didn't have his number. So they all kind of went off for a bit of a jog while he got his number sorted out.
Yep.
Bekele and another athlete had gone all the way down the straight away, you know, 100 meters from the start of the race, and all of a sudden they called him to the line and the gun went. He was 80 meters behind, and he gets up and he runs 26:52. So that's kind of a 26:40, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and that for him, he went out in 60 seconds for the first lap of that race, and then for him to calm down, regroup, get his head back in, a long race, 10,000 meters is no joke. So he's obviously got the head on. His head is on right now, and I'm excited to see how he runs tonight. Cooper Teare now into the lead. Cooper is a phenomenal athlete. He ran under 13 minutes indoors in Boston with Connor, with Cole Hocker. There's a lot of Coles and Coopers and all these. But these two training together, and now Cooper Teare to be in front is not surprising. He wants to have a solid race. He wants to have an honest pace out there. And I'm not surprised to see him in the lead.
Yeah, 2:57 through the first kilometer. That's slow for these guys. In fact, it's very, very slow. But that's not a surprise. This is about racing. This is about working out the best way for this race to unfold for you. And if you're not interested in a fast pace, if you're trusting your kick, you're nowhere near the front. Hence, Quemoy, look where he is, towards the back. Look where Gebriwet is, towards the back. They'll keep an eye on Grant Fisher. He makes any moves. But so far, the guys who we think may well contend at the end, happy just to watch. So Cooper Teare leading them. Just dropped from a 71 to kind of a 69, but that's still fairly comfortable running, very comfortable running for these guys.
Yeah, they're running 2:57 through that first K. That's, you know, that is pedestrian for these guys. That's slower than their threshold.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cooper Teare, I asked him how things were going, and he said things are going really well. They train differently with Ben Thomas. And as we mentioned, Cole Hawker, 1,500 meter specialist this weekend, running the 8 and the 1,500, but they train a lot together. They do a lot on the bike. They run hard. They're not these high mileage guys that, you know, just have a bunch of junk miles in their legs. They are more about intensity. So they're in their training zones. They know their zones. They almost train more like triathletes.
Just a little move from the back from Diku Wenayo, who just got a little closer, just tucked in though behind Bekele, fourth, just ahead of Grant Fisher. I think it's slowed again, hasn't it?
It looks like it's really slowed,
yeah.
But you know, the one to really watch, Quemoy, was one of the guys that really had a phenomenal last 500 meters. Now in the 5,000 meters, sometimes you see the last mile is super quick, or you see the last 1,000 and even the last 400. But at the Olympics in Paris, he was the guy that just got himself back in the race. He was way back, I believe in 13th position. And then he moved all the way up to second, excuse me, and just had a phenomenal race there.
Yeah, I mentioned, I remember watching him as a 1,500 meter runner, and you know, a lot of the Kenyans do move through the distances, but a lot of them, you know, they become 1,500 meter specialists, and he looked like he had all of the credentials to be a great 1,500 meter runner. Never quite got the big breaks, if you like, and he was around when your Timothy Cheruiyot was dominating from his compatriots. So I think that performance last year, as you mentioned, was definitely the race of his career up to this point.
Well, slowing way down again. I mean, they're down to 75-second laps, which again, you know, I know we're not talking so much about time, but when you're running that slow, you have to mention it. This is all about points, and they're playing the game.
And you know, this is where nerves can tell. You got to hold your nerves, like a poker game. You know it's slow, you know you don't normally race this. And what can happen as well is when it's unusually slow, you can feel worse. You can start to convince yourself, I feel terrible here, but it's because you're not running at a normal, comfortable pace. And those little mind games start to play.
Well, they have to keep in mind that, you know, there are some athletes out here that have run 5s and 10s for a long time, but they still have speed in their legs. And, you know, Grant Fisher is a guy that's run very well over 1,500 meters. He's run 3:33 in 2025. So, you know, that was in that 3,000 meters that he did that. So he can run fast. So you don't want to forget that. You know, he has the wheels, he has the strength, but so does a Cooper Teare who's out there. He has run very fast over 1,500 meters. He's a U.S. champion at one point. He was an NCAA champion in that as well. So just very, very fast, very, very solid runner. And just, I think Cooper Teare really hasn't gotten the accolades that he should have, or the praise that he should get.
Yeah, he ran pretty swift indoor 5K, but he was outkicked by his training partner, Cole Hawker, as he said. So again, going back to that point of the 1,500 guys can run 5,000s, the 5,000 guys can run 1,500s.
Well, that was the slowest of all, but now you can see, just look at their rhythm starts to pick up a little bit. They went from a 78 to a 74, excuse me, that last lap. So they are now starting to get going just a little.
Yeah, Bekele deciding enough is enough, you know, and he could finish,
yeah,
but he knows the caliber, the quality of the guys behind him. And he's gone to the front, but he hasn't really done anything. You know, I always think if you make a move like that at this point, he steps aside, he says, okay, I got out in front here. Maybe he thinks it's a bit breezy, I don't know, but he's not really interested in pushing the pace here.
Well, Bekele is definitely a very good 5,000-meter runner. He's been under 12:50 4 times in his career. He doesn't run them very much because he's running all these other distances, but very good. He was 4th at the 5,000 in the World Champs at Doha in 2019. So, you know, getting back to this, now asking for someone else to take the lead.
Well, while you're watching this toing and throwing at the front, really, just look at the back. Gebruet just jogging, keeping quiet, keeping calm, just keeping away from everything. Quemoy a little bit the same. Fisher just getting crowded a little bit, just give a bit of a nudge. And for the first time, Quemoy moves around the outside, maybe thinking 2K to go. Just want to cover, be near the front. If anyone makes a move, I want to be able to quickly step up. Finds himself in the front, but again, not doing anything, just leading.
Well, Gebruet is the 2nd fastest 5,000-meter of all time. He's run 12:36, so he is so good at this. Everyone is thinking about him in this race right now, and they should be very worried because he was 5th at the Olympic Games, but he had a huge kick. And so he's a huge threat, and I think that people need to now start thinking about how do they run that out of him.
Well, they went through 3,000 in 9 minutes 8. And I'd probably be stretching things to say I might have been able to keep up for a bit. Probably not. But yeah, that's very slow. Really slow. But that's what this is about. So after a little bit of a kind of pace lift from Teare, it's just been easy, cat and mouse. Gebruet right at the back. Something's going to crack here. Somebody is going to think, you know, I can't leave this to the last 400, the last 500. And away Quemoy puts his foot down, as I say. Not in a way which makes people panic. I thought he was going to go for it there. Just had a little bit of a surge, and then he's just checked back again.
Well, Quemoy has been good for so long. I mean, for 10 years, this man has been able to run very fast. He's gone through his ups and downs. He's had injuries. He had to go away from the sport a little bit, came back, didn't know if he was going to come back to the sport. But he ran 3:27 as an 18-year-old, and then he did again last year as a 28-year-old. So has had a long career here and still looks very sharp.
Yeah, and that was the point I was making earlier on. You know, he was such a good youngster. He was so good, and everybody was looking at this career ahead of him. And you know, he had all the credentials: could kick, was strong, was fast, and he kind of started to fall away a little bit. And as I said, in 22 when he got injured, but he's been last 2 years has been phenomenal. Right, is this moving now? Again, another little look at the front from Bekele. 3 laps to go. Still, all 8 men tucked together. He could just about throw a big blanket over them. It would have to be quite a big one, but nonetheless, you could probably just about do it.
Well, now it's about positioning and actually staying patient. You know, when you are someone like a Grant Fisher, who we were talking about early on, being in that 3rd position, he's always kind of right there, tasting the front. And he said in his interview coming into this, yeah, he's done really well this indoor season, but he still thinks about 2 people beat him in the 5K at the Olympics and 2 people beat him in the 10K, and he doesn't like that. So he's very hungry to win races.
Teare, the first to kind of nudge onto the shoulder of Bekele. Because he's done that, he then just responds a little bit. Others start to look for good position. Quemoy looks like he's working a little hard for me on the inside, just even with his slight lift in pace. Fisher, comfortable, looks relaxed. So does Gebruet. Gebruet looks as though he's just got his eyes on Fisher. They're coming around with 2 laps to go. Still, all 8 men tucked together. No real moves at the front here from Bekele. Pace still not on here. They'll go through the gears at some point, but for the moment, they're still cruising.
So the 2 guys in the back were the 2 guys that came from behind at the Olympics to get 2nd and 5th. Keep your eye on them, but this is exactly where Fisher wants to be, on the shoulder, watching what's going on in front, waiting, almost getting ready to pounce.
Quemoy still looks like he's working hard for me at the back. Gebruet watching Fisher ahead of him. We haven't really mentioned Dylan Jacobs. He's still in there with the green vest.
5th at the World Indoors was Dylan Jacobs, having a good indoor season, now training in Boulder with the On Athletic Group.
So Teare and Dikamwenyao on the outside of Bekele, tucked on the inside Teare, Grant Fisher on his shoulder. Here comes Gebruet on the outside, the Ethiopian being followed by Quemoy, and they're going to take the bell, and finally the pace starts to arrive. Bekele at the front, and Gebruet's gone hard, and he's gone fast, and he's gone quick, and Grant Fisher's been caught unawares there. Quemoy not able to cover, and it is indeed Dylan Jacobs who's going with him.
Watching Grant Fisher there, right there, he had to make a move. It was a big move. He had to kind of slide through, and this is where he will use that strength and speed that he had over the indoor season. But look at Dylan Jacobs.
Jacobs has stayed quiet all the way through this. Could this be the biggest win of his career? Grant Fisher's now on terms. Teare coming back into it as well. Quemoy even rallying, and right on the outside, the Americans are charging. It's Dylan Jacobs, Teare, and Grant Fisher who's meant to win this. Is Fisher going to get ahead? Grant Fisher has just got enough. He's going to do it by a meter. Fisher gets it. That was a brilliant finish. A race which took a while to get going, but in the end, a big, big last lap.
Look at that 51-second last lap. Woo!
I'd be interested to see, because we've got a last 200 here for 26.2 for Grant Fisher, but that wasn't done smoothly in the sense of that last whole 400. You know, Gebruet went hard and he went first. Fisher just got caught a little bit. Dylan Jacobs was in a great position, got up onto Gebruet. At this point, you're thinking he's got a great chance here. Fisher's now got himself back involved, but then what a strap down the home straight.
I really liked how Dylan Jacobs just took control. This is his old ways. He is a winning guy. He likes to win, but he's raced these two Americans for years, since high school. But watch that drive. Teare hunting Grant Fisher down, but Grant Fisher just shows that he has that turnover, that confidence, and the will to win. He has such patience. He doesn't panic. That's why he is one that's winning, setting world records, and winning medals.
Yeah, that's the mark of a champion. He had to fight for that in the end. He knew, though, he was meant to win this. He wanted to win it. 12 points, so important.
I didn't know with 300 to go, though. He really had to make that big move.
I think Gebruet probably made too big a move when he went, and he's not been racing on the track, and that's hard when you change up like that.